Good evening. My name is Ray Dwyer, and I'm your host to Dr. Joe Dispenza's discussion and meditation group. What we're talking about tonight, breaking the habit of being yourself, chapter 2. Chapter is called Overcoming Your Environment. What is your environment? Your environment is everything in your three-dimensional world around your body, everything in your emotional world around your body, and your consciousness. Let me expound on that a little bit. But that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Let me just give you an introduction to this by reading the first paragraph, because it kind of tells you everything that we're going to be talking about tonight. So pardon me as I just read. I generally go through it reading segments, parts of paragraphs, sentences even. But in this case, this is a good introduction to this chapter. By now, I trust that you're beginning to accept the idea that the subjective mind has an effect on the objective world. You might even be keen to acknowledge that an observer can affect a subatomic world and influence a specific event just by collapsing a single electron from the wave of energy into a particle. At this point, you may also believe the scientific experiment in the quantum mechanics I've discussed, which prove consciousness directly controls the tiny world of atoms, because those elemental fundamentally are made of consciousness and energy. That's quantum physics in action. Now, if you weren't part of last week and you're not really up on quantum mechanics and quantum science, that may have gone over your head. So let me pick it apart a little bit. Keen to acknowledge that the observer can affect the subatomic world and influence specific events. This may be a hard thing to swallow for those who grew up in the atomic Newtonian world, but your mind, your consciousness, not your emotional mind, but your consciousness level of your energy affects the quantum subatomic world and can change the action and behavior of the elemental world. It's not woo-woo, it's science, and it really does affect your world. The tiny world of atoms, because those elements fundamentally are made of consciousness. The very elemental parts of an electron are not matter. They're made of energy and energy with consciousness. And that's how your consciousness attunes to that consciousness. And since you are the divine creator, you influence those particles of energy and you can change them. How's that for an introduction to environment? Then a couple of points. How can my mind influence bigger events? How can I collapse electrons into specific events? My goal is that you understand and can see in action how there might be a scientific basis for accepting that your thoughts can create your reality. Now, when I started this, the idea that my thoughts could create a reality at all was a stretch. Being grown up in the scientific Newtonian world, I was taught that I'm kind of stuck with what I got and just deal with it the best I can, right? But that's not true science anymore, and that's not why. And our meditative process has categorically taught us that our mind, our consciousness, our energy can affect the energy about us, can affect our world. And we're going to start this with the second energy center, which is your environment energy center. For those who have some history in this, generally as you work up the energy centers, for some people, it's called a chakra. For those who are new, let's deal with this question. Dr. Joe goes out of his way not to use anything that's divisive. Nationality, ethnicity, lifestyles, religion, culture. He sticks to the subject. It's very specific. And with that in mind, he uses the expression energy centers. To me, the expression energy center is a lot easier to understand. Well, let me explain why. Because what we're talking about is not just the field of that energy center, which is what I was trained to think of the word chakra as being the field about us. So we're not dealing with just the energy center, but the energy center, the field of the energy center, but we're dealing with the actual body of the energy center. Did you know that the body, the human experience, doesn't have just one brain? It has one cortex, obviously, but there are many MINI brains in the human expression. The main ones are the 7 energy centers. Why are they called energy centers? Because when they're active, the neural complex, they're complexes of neurons, and when you get a cluster of neurons together, they create an energy field when they're activated, and it's something that's measurable. This isn't woo-woo. These are actually measurable energy fields, and each one of these minds, brains with a mind, have a specific job, and they do specific things. You can't teach your gut an address. You can't teach your solar plex how to read, but you can teach it about your environment depending on how you think about how it feels about its environment. There is intelligence there that's specialized. And tonight we're talking, so we'll go through them. So the first one is the lower one, peridium. That's that area of the bone that looks like this. There's a nerve complex there. I am not going to go through there's a picture of it with the nerve ganglions that go all the way up. The second one is about the environment. The third one is the solar plex. It's about time and separation and things like that. The fourth one is your heart. The fifth one is your throat. The sixth one is the pineal gland, that nice little crystal radio. Do you know you got a crystal radio back here? You really do. And then the seventh one is the CEO, the ruler of the cortex, the top of your thinking brain. And then there's the eighth, which is not even associated with the body, and that's above you. We're going to be talking about most of those in this book. Tonight, we're going to be talking about number 2, the environment. So we're going to be talking about number 2, the environment. The important part of what I just said in the introduction is that I wanted to remind you that you have the ability to change your environment in amazing ways. You have the ability to change how you process energy in your body. You have the ability to change who you are fundamentally, greater than you can imagine if you're new to this work. On page 40. And maybe you think about your problems so much because it was your thinking that created them in the first place. Perhaps your troubles feel so real because you constantly visit those familiar feelings and initially created the problem. If you insist on thinking and feeling equal to the circumstances in your life, you will reaffirm that particular reality. So in the next few chapters, I want to focus on what you need to understand in order to change. We rehearse these things in our head. We rehearse them again and again. It's part of our training in our society to be safe, think about, worry about. Part of it is our natural urge to survive. We don't want to step in that twice. And part of it is just we just don't know better. So what I wanted you to understand is that you are not body. you really are consciousness, and you really have an energy to do some remarkable things. Particularly change your life. Most people focus on three things in their life: the environment, their body, and time. Tonight, we're going to talk about the environment. Why are we doing this? One of the things I want you to get in your mind tonight is that you have the power to change your life, and you have the power to change how you relate to your life. If you want to change, you must have in your thoughts an idealized self, a model that you can emulate. If one of the things that Dr. Joe talks about is, have you done the practice? Have you done the work? Do you practice it? Meditation is a skill. It's not a magic pill. I don't know about you, but my history of getting where I am here, I had a number of teachers that made me feel like meditation was some kind of woo-woo thing, just mystical and spirits and stuff like that. There is some element of that. I have no disrespect to those who with wonderful talents, but there's a lot about meditation that's simply practice skill development. Karina, I see your hand up.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Ray. So the part that you just read was, I think, the most difficult for me to accept, that actually what I did created my environment, created my feelings, created my problems. Like we we go unconscious, as you said, and we think that we're doing everything right, correctly. That's how they taught us to do it. And then we get this toxic environment or whatever, and someone comes and says, "Hey, you did it." No, I didn't. Yes, you did. So that was the hardest part for me to just accept and acknowledge. I don't know how everybody else is feeling, but yeah,
Karina, I think you put your finger right on a very important part of what I just said. Very good. Thank you for bringing that up, because I went through that same thing. When I first started healing myself and my environment, all I can think of is, how in the world can I be blamed for the chaos that I grew up in? Well,
exactly.
obviously as a child, I wasn't. How could I be blamed for the government that put me in a war? So how can I be held accountable? I was just a young man put in a war zone that had to do absolutely horrendous things. How can I be to blame to being born in a dysfunctional family? On and on and on. How can I be blamed for that? Well, it took me a while to get an answer for that. Let me take it to an extreme case. The world goes to war, and half the population just goes through bloody hell. How can an individual be blamed for that? It doesn't take much seeing to know that the individual can't be blamed for that. So what are they talking about? They're talking about how you hold on to it that creates your present moment and creates your future. Let me explain. You drive down the road, you go around a curve, you hit a pothole, and bam, bam, and it scares the tar out of you. You know you have to go through that road next week. Some of us will spend the week worrying about the curve with that pothole in it. So when they get to their curve, they're terrorized, and they can't hardly drive that street again because that pothole scared them so much. That is your responsibility. The pothole is not your responsibility. How you react to it and hold on to it, that's disturbed your life now, that is your responsibility. I had events happen to me as a young man I was still angry at as an older adult. That's my responsibility. I had terrors, things in my face accusations in my mind that were 40 plus years old. That was my responsibility. That is what was disturbing my today. It's my responsibility to heal that. The world is the world. It's always been that way, and it will probably always be that way. My responsibility is how I respond to it. That is the answer to your question. Dina, I see your hand.
Hi, hello everybody. I actually wanted to mention the same, right? It's our responsibility how we react. So it
Yes.
took for me, I think, 5 decades not to be angry with my parents. It's about my environment. It's really a process. It's such a process. But actually, when I was able to cut my emotional response and my emotional connections, and it just gone. It's just amazing. And it's all this book about how we can manage our emotional connections.
There it
To,
is. That's
to
what I
the,
was saying, Dina. That's
yeah,
very good.
yeah.
It's how we manage it.
I would
Yeah.
say, think about Viktor Frankl, who were surviving the concentration camp and became one of the famous psychiatrists in Europe and in the world, right? The people who were able to survive and to go through really difficult circumstances like a war or camp, people who were just turn themselves toward their inner eye, inner them, and manage their emotional responses. I, it's very, very vulnerable balance because we still need to survive in the difficult
Yes.
consequences. But anyway, there is a very balance, and something in actually can save us.
Right. We will spend a good part of almost every chapter in 3 books at least touching this subject. This is a foundational, important subject. Lynn, thank you for having your hand up. Thank you, Dina.
Yeah, something that helped me with this is that, I would get so caught up mentally thinking, how could I have drawn this to me? And it may be like a hereditary thing, genetic, whatever. What helped me because it doesn't really matter to me where it comes from. The bottom line is I want to get past it, right?
Yes.
I want to transform that pattern, that behavior. I started seeing it as it's in my field, right? Because very often it's unconscious. But even when I saw it as unconscious, I would get stuck in the mental body of it. So when I started to see it as somewhere it's stuck in my energy field and it's here, then it was easier for me to just say, okay, well, let me deal with what's before me now and not really worry too much about it, because I could get caught up in that mental piece and hold on to it way longer than I wanted to, so just knowing it was stuck, almost like a spider's web. Sometimes it comes to me as a spider's web, and a spider's web will have different bugs caught in it, right? So then I would just say, okay, it's caught in my field, and like do a little meditation to remove that bug from it, and then it would help me to move forward with it.
Yes. Yeah, the responsibility is not for the event. The responsibility is for how we react and hold that event energy in us. That's the responsibility. Steve's, thank you for holding your hand up.
Hi, Ray. Yeah, thanks for all you do. By the way, just quick comment on your earlier stuff. I love this group because it keeps me on track, like to read the book, or I listen to it on Audible, and I love it. I love it. And it's 1 chapter a week, so it's very manageable. Okay, so that was a general comment. The second thing I wanted to highlight is it's amazing. Like, I'm in my 40s, and same thing. Had the same experience that I think you and just about everyone else on here has. You know, right? Like finding out that I'm angry about something that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so even gone to a talk therapist, whatever, and that's helped a little bit. But I would say the meditation stuff has really helped a lot more to become aware, like to hear some of those, what was before unconscious voices in my head, and being able to slow it down, as he talks about in the book. And so that's going pretty well. What I wanted to ask about was, now that I see this in myself and I'm catching it, as soon as I'm able to catch it like very quickly, and even start to turn it around pretty quickly. It just was a matter of becoming consciously aware of all that stuff. That's going pretty well. What happens is, though, I see it in other people now. And when they're on a loop, like I go and do a lot of home repairs for people. So I'm in people's houses. And, you know, this one woman yesterday, she was reacting negatively to a situation where the dishwasher wasn't working quite correctly. But it's not like we had water spraying it. She was acting like it was like 11 out of a 10. And I really was like, I think this is like a 2, maybe a 4 out of 10. You know what I mean? And she was overreacting. I started to hit me in my head what was going on is that she's in her 70s. She's not aware of this information, and she's been running this loop. And I was empathetic to her for a little bit, but when she kept having that negative energy, I was like, I almost wanted to run out the door and get away from that. So I was wondering if you went through that. What suggestions do you have? Because that is becoming the tough struggle, is me being empathetic. Because now that I know it, I want everyone else to know it. And I know it sounds probably selfish, but you know, I'm struggling with that right now.
I go out of my way not to rescue people. That sounds kind of cold, but I have learned that until people get to where you just described, where you are now owning it, there's not much I can do to help them. So in your case, I would define my job very carefully, be very generous with your patients, and just do the best your job you can, because you cannot rescue that person. You just can't. It doesn't work that way. I have tried. I bought books and gave them to people. I spent hours with people. I did everything I could. And until they are ready to get to where you just described, they go, oh my God, I'm doing this to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much you can do for them. And anything you try to do, they will resent you for it.
Okay, good. Good advice. And then if it's just like, if it's starting to really like irritate me, and I guess
that's why I said, draw a circle around your job, your task, and be very gracious with your time and your patience.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
That's my suggestion. And to put it in real, I lost a lot of jobs before I got to this work. I was very angry, very stressed, very intolerant. And, you know, they could only deal with me for so long, and I'd go finding another job. I was very good at my job, so I could get work, but they could only tolerate me for so long, and I was at another company, passed me on to the next. So,
Gotcha.
yeah. Karina, I see your hand.
Yeah, so just to suggest to Steve, because I'm going through the same thing as you did and as Steve feels, right? If we are doing what we learn to do, we become the invitation and the example. And people would come and ask, how do you do that? And this is the opening for sharing, not imposing, but sharing. And
Yeah.
never in time of crisis. Like if something is happening and somebody is freaking out, just, yeah, follow Ray's advice. But just casually, you can say, oh, you know, I learned something. Would you mind if I share it with you? Or just be the example in the invitation, and that's it, and wait for them to come.
I had a very wise person tell me one time when I was trying to tell them what I was doing, part of the early days. And she said, quit telling me, show me. Show me that it works in your life. Show me what you're doing. And it made me stop in my tracks. And I thought, she is absolutely correct. If I am not living it well enough to show, who am I to open my mouth and preach at somebody else? And so that was the beginning of me not sharing, not telling people what I do. Just draw a circle around myself and be as gracious and patient, whatever I'm doing around people, whether it's walking through a grocery store, talking to the teller at the cash register, at a restaurant being served. My intent is to show it in a way that people can feel me and notice I am different. Then if they ask, I've got something to say. But if I don't have enough turned on to get them to ask me, then I don't offer it. And when doctors ask me, how did I end my sickness? I don't even tell them. I just say, I know how to take care of myself. If they ask me more, I tell them more. But in the 4 years since this happened, I've not had one doctor ask me a follow-up question to that. Really strange. Let's go one more time, and then I got more of the chapter to go. Ibis.
Hi, everybody. Thank you
Thank-
so much for doing this. You are amazing.
Thank you for
Everybody
raising
here is
your hand.
amazing.
Well,
Thank
great,
you.
great. What's on your mind, Ibis? How do you
So,
pronounce your name? I really mean to be respectful about that.
well, it's Evie. It's spelled in
Evie.
Spanish. I is pronounced E, so
Oh,
it's Evie.
that's why you put it up like that. Okay,
Yeah.
Evie. Okay, now I understand. Okay, Evie.
So so to Steve, whenever I go through this process too, I want to share it to the world. I have kids. I want everybody to do what I'm doing because things are happening so great. But then I kind of take a step back and I look and I'll get frustrated, and I'm in sales, so I deal with like people that are just, very difficult. And then I sit back and I say, I'm doing all this meditation. I'm trying to really, create this space and this wholeness within myself. And I'm realizing that there's something missing. There's something I have to meditate on more, because why am I being so frustrated towards the people that still don't have their own answers? So then I have to kind of point the finger at myself and say, well, wait a minute, why am I why am I judging? What are they doing that's actually reflecting on myself?
Ooh, very good.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that a little bit. I think the one challenge, I think, I was installing this dishwasher for this woman, and and it didn't work. It didn't turn on, but it had turned on as I was installing it. It still have no idea. I think it was just a faulty dishwasher, and I think part of what made the situation complicated was that she was upset slash attacking me initially, and so I had to kind of deflect that, and I had to say to her, hey, I'm 1,000% confident in the connections I made, and then ultimately, in order to kind of shut her up, what I did was I unscrewed it, and I pulled it out, and I took I showed her everything, and then she was more convinced, and she got on the phone with Frigidaire and everything. But I think what was going through my head was, or later maybe, like, so initially, I felt a little bit attacked, and I could understand. I was trying to be empathetic and understand her point of view. On the other hand, like I think all I could just see, and maybe this is where I went wrong. Like I said, maybe it wasn't she was acting like 11 out of 10, but she was acting like this was an 8 out of 10, And I'm like, it's, your house isn't falling apart. We don't got water shooting everywhere. You don't have sparks flying. And I kind of, you know, I look back on it and I was like, geez, I wish I would have at the time just would have said to her, you know, do we need to be this animated about it? You know, do we just, I wanted her to just calm down and just kind of like take it in stride, or just like, hey, we'll work to solve the problem. But, you know, she just was like, she went from like zero to anti-hero like so quickly. And yeah, maybe I'm just not there yet. Maybe I'm just not there. I just was like,
I think Eve said something that comes up here. You were resonating internally to her. You weren't completely clean
right,
yourself.
okay.
Yeah. And you need a little bit more patience.
Okay.
Okay, Meredith, one more and I'll go on. Meredith, please. Thank you for raising your hand.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you could extrapolate what Steve's saying on many levels to many people, whether it's a dishwasher or just a conversation, of how that is sometimes a trigger. And I've had that. I mean, bless my heart, I'm going to be up there soon in high numbers. And I've had that with elders and people, even younger people. And lately, I want to say to the person, and I can't remember who kindly said it, this idea of getting it out of your mind and into a physical space has kind of been my drift to quickly shift, to kind of shift the intensity, if you will, of the trigger. I call it a trigger, whatever the reaction, the emotion. And sometimes I've even had to remove myself, like just say, and I've dealt with people, you know, helping people who are service people. And I've just had to say, oh, I have to go out. I have to go outside a minute, or I have to, you know, can I use your restroom? It's like you have to diffuse that without even, for me, and I don't want to labor it, but without even trying to figure it out. It's almost like it's a match for me that's been struck and I just want to blow it out. But the mind starts thinking, why are they doing this? You know, what is my participation? Why is it such a, you know, 11, 20? But for them, it could be a 1. That's how they react to everything. So I don't know if any of that helped, but I get it. And it's sort of in my life all the time now. And I don't know if it's kind of a worldly thing, but I do like, and I did resonate, and I just want to confirm that idea of taking it out of my brain and sort of putting it into more of a physical, like how can I resolve it quietly and move it and shift it and just reset myself. So there you go.
Thank you, Meredith. That last part, it is something in your brain, and that's a good segue. I find that for me, the cleaner I am, the cleaner I get with my meditation, so that my past is no longer part of my present. I've healed so much of my past that I just don't resonate with that stuff much anymore. I still have a strong survival instinct. You know, I'll still respond to a real threat, but most of the noise of my life now is just noise. And I just go, oh man, yes, I get frustrated when I've got a time schedule to meet, but so much of what used to set me off simply isn't there anymore. I've cleaned and freed myself from so much, but it's all about what's in the mind. And let me read the next statement and you'll understand where I'm going with. I'm on the page 41. Current neuroscientific theory tells us that the brain is organized to reflect everything we know in our environment. We're reflecting what we know, and what we know is in part created by an expectation from our past. We know our past and we're creating it and bringing it forward to our present. We're overreacting because we're responding to this clouded memory of our past, which we don't even know the details now, but we're bringing it forward and we're responding to it now in a way that past event was somehow stirred into the moment. And it has, for me, it had little to do with anything, but I'd get all, you know what I mean? So what we need to do is think about that statement. We're responding to our known environment. All the information we have been exposed to throughout our lives, that's our past, in the form of knowledge and experience, is stored in the brain synaptic connection. And when something relates to it in our environment, that's what this chapter is about. These memories go, oh, I remember something that's like this, and it will fire a chemical release so that we will be responding chemically, just like something that happened years ago that we can't even remember, but this does. And that's the subject of tonight. How do we free ourselves from this reaction so that our present environment isn't a reflection of something 20 years ago that we can't even remember why we're overreacting? To me, this was kind of new information to have it put in my face, to make it said so clear. What do we collectively call all these memories of people and things that we experience at different places and times in our lives, all that clutter in our memory? Well, that's our external environment. You say, wait a minute, that's a memory. That memory is our external environment. During our walking hours, as we routinely interact with the diverse stimulus of our world, our external environment activates various brain circuits. Like I said, you're just doing your day and something happens and some memory goes, oh, that something is similar, not the same, similar to what happened 10 years ago that I still remember that you told me was important. And so I'm going to drive a signal that gives you chemical reaction, and you get worked up and you don't even know why. Excuse me, let me make this more personal. And I didn't even know why I was overreacting. I just knew that something's wrong and I got to fix it. Well, yeah, that works for only so long, and then your customers and your bosses just go, get out of here, right? If your thoughts determine your reality and you keep thinking the same thoughts, then you will continue to produce the same reality day by day. My thoughts produced the reality of threat, and I produced a reality of threat about me. That's how it works. That's the definition of your environment. Let me develop that just a little bit more. Your environment is your everything having to do with your body, your how comfortable, where you're sitting in the chair right now, that's your environment. Also, everything internal to your body, your food, your drink, the care, your traumas to your body, things like that, that's your environment. Also, when you think a thought, that thought drives an experience into your body that releases chemicals throughout your body, hormones, to prepare you for whatever reaction to the thought you had. And your body gets a chemical reaction. That is your environment to your body, because you got chemicals going on at the cellular level. That's your environment. And there's one more environment. Remember this energy center number 8? Well, that touches the infinity. That touches the cosmic field. When that stirs energy through the cortex and releases high energy vibrations, that releases energy into your body. That is also your environment. And there's a word that we'll learn and hear numerous times because it's precious to me: epigenetics. And you'll understand why that's such an important word as we go through. Epi means above. Genetics means your genetics. That is what your environment is. Now, I grew up thinking my environment is stuff out here. And then I thought, well, my environment's my body. It's my body, it's my thought process that drives chemical, and it's my consciousness that resonates with something, whatever it resonates with, that is driving energy into me. And my genetic expression is responding to the energy driven into me and the chemicals it produces and things like that. I am genetically responding to my consciousness. Interesting. You may not think, I'm on page 40, it looks like 48, 43, excuse me. You may not think that your environment and your thoughts are that rigidly similar and your reality so easily reproduced. But when you consider that your brain is a complete record of your past and your mind is the product of your consciousness, in one sense, you might always be thinking in the past. If you're reflecting, trying to solve your now, you're bringing your past with you. But right, that's what we all do. That's what education is. Yeah, and that's right. I've got education, and that education is part of what supported me all my life and my skill with my job. But that is a tool we use. But what I'm talking about is all those miscellaneous memories that drive chemicals in us and changes our epigenetics, our energy of us. I do this because I have this image of a column of light in me. You'll get used to it. By responding with the same brain hardware that matches what you remember, you're creating a level of mind that is identical to the past. Now that, I don't know about you, but that sentence I was slow to understand. By rehearsing my past and thinking about my past and I create the same mind as I was in that past event. And in that same mind, I'm creating the same chemical release in my body. And in that same chemical release in my body, my reality becomes, my consciousness reality becomes the same reality of whatever that event was. That is the responsibility that we have, that we can control. That moment where I am in my consciousness being what I was years ago. Okay. Reason this: when you think from your past memories, you can only create past experiences. Isn't that an odd statement? But Dr. Joe says, think of a future thing, draw in the future. But until you learn to heal your past, when you project something in the future, what you do, or let me ask you a question. Don't you take what you've learned and project it in the future and try to draw a map from here to there? That's what I did. And I wondered why it didn't work for but that's not what the goal is. Dr. Joe says the goal is to create that future without connection to your past. And so there's a lot to learn about how to free yourself from what we're talking about right here. When you think from your past memories, you can only create a past experience in your present moment. Anybody heard the expression of PTSD? Post-traumatic stress disorder? When a memory takes over the mind, that individual is living in the present the same as he lived in that past trauma. He's sitting in this chair and he's rehearsing this trauma in as far as his inner self. He's recreating that past. And not only and to make things worse, he's not only recreating it, he's reinforcing it in his mind to assure himself that someday in the future, he'll do it again. That is no small thing to overcome. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Maria Cumbley?
Actually, I'm the husband. You're on a roll, Ray. That's Maria's my wife. I'm James. And sorry to interrupt you. You really did a fantastic job there. But you started talking about epigenetics and the eighth energy center.
Yes.
And I just have a question. I don't really understand that eighth center. And I was wondering, you mentioned epigenetics. Can the eighth energy center actually bring a negative chemical balance to the body? I would think if it's cosmic, it'd only be in your favor instead of using consciousness in harming your body. Is it
Short answer
making any
is
sense?
the short answer to your question is yes. Whatever energy that you're possessing and holding on to is going to reflect in the body. I'm not going to talk about that because I don't want to refer and reference those kind of energies. But whatever kind of energy you're holding on to, the body is going to be reflecting. I held on the energy of stress, anger, justice. You know what I mean? And my body broke down and I got cancer, phase 4 melanoma cancer. And I kept being told, it's going to kill you, it's going to kill you, it's going to kill you. And that's where Dr. Joe came in and changed my mind. And when I changed my mind, I started opening the door to the 8th center in a constructive way. And I had an energy experience that epigenetically changed me. I got up off the floor a different personality. It was abrupt as all get out, I'm telling you. Now, does everybody get that? No, a lot of people are incremental, and that's fine. But it kind of suited me because I'm not a kind of an incremental guy. I kind of hit the door running, you know. But I had a life threat on me. But all fairness, it took me a year to get there, 9 months or so. And I had a lot of incremental steps to get there. It wasn't one event. If I talk as if it's one event, it's because that one event was like, that's when the lights came on. But there is lots of little incremental aha moments that took me one step closer. And I'd be doing it, and then another day, and I go, oh, you know, when you get that aha inspiration moment and your thinking goes another step. I had lots of those, building confidence in me, building knowledge in me, building skill in me. Go, oh, this is working. And my confidence go up, and I'd get more earnest, more focused. And then one day I got it right. And the sky blew open, my heart blew open. I cried all over the place. And I changed. Epigenetics is an energy thing. When I first got my healing, I went around for probably a month or two telling, I had a miracle, yay, hallelujah. It took me weeks, if not a couple months, for me to learn the word epigenetics. Epigenetics says when you change your energy, your body changes. Do you remember last chapter when we talked about Einstein's theory of relativity, E equals mc squared and m equals E divided by c squared, that energy and mass are the same thing, just different frequencies, and that mass is and that Einstein says the field defines the mass does not define the field. But it's about epigenetics is about changing your energy, and your energy is what we practice with in your meditation. You change this energy, and it's not a pill. It's a skill development. And I know I've talked to people one of my funnest, look that one up. One of the funniest stories I got is about a story of a husband who brought his wife to a Dr. Joe meeting so she could have a miracle. He never studied anything. He never read the book. He was just being a good husband, loving his wife, bringing her in so she could meditate in and maybe get a healing. It was about the third day that he finally got used to all the sounds and the jumping up and down and stuff like this, because he didn't do any of this. He has no history in it at all. It was either the third or fourth day he gave it and he says, okay, I'm going to start participating. It was somewhere around the fourth day, I think it was, when he got the idea and he surrendered. It was one of those lay down on the floor meditations, and you sit there and you just thought, okay, and you let go. He had an event of his lifetime. He had a total energy change. His heart blew open. He had revelation. There are people, and his life changed. In that moment, he got off the floor, a different person. That's epigenetic change. I had one of those all by myself here. I get up the floor, and 2 weeks later, I went into cancer surgery, and all the cancer in my body was dead. The tumors were still there because they hadn't dissolved yet. But they cut me open and said, Mr. Dwyer, something happened. All your tumors are dead. So they took out the big one, sewed me up, and that was the end of my cancer. I swear to God, I got documents. And since then, I've never had any skin cancer. After 9 years of being told it's going to kill me, an epigenetic event hit me, went through me, lit me up, and changed me. And that cancer ended. Now, I've had other stuff since then. It's like the darkness wants to play with me, and so it keeps me humble. But that experience ended that day. That's epigenetics. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, Ray, you did, and you got to be a warrior to get to the point where you were. So congratulations. But you mentioned that the 8th energy center is really not part of your body. So even when I do the Botech series, and when I go to 8th, I've always had a problem trying to even visualize what to do with that. And I was thinking, if it's cosmic energy, if you're dealing with your past, are you really dealing with the 8th, or are you dealing with everything that's known in 1 through 7? So it's just the 8th energy center in itself is a mystery to me. So I just asked that question. So
that's a fair question.
I'll get to it.
That's a fair question, and this is a little early, but one of the secrets that I learned, I had to come in the back door to learn it. As I was trying to will myself for the analytical mind to shut down, to open the 8th center, I would argue with the angels who I felt was guarding the gate. I want in, just, well, you can't, arguing with an angel is kind of a funny thing, but that's what it felt like. Nothing. Just no bear. What I learned is that these are reactive. You can't order them. And what are they reactive to? They're reactive of you getting something else right. When you quit being analytical, frontal, particle in the wave, when you quit being the particle and you learn how to go back and become space, and you learn how to go into awareness and be attentive awareness, and you learn how to move around your body, not by attention, but by awareness, you soon realize your consciousness is not associated, does not have to be analytical. Your consciousness is more comfortable being in the awareness phase, attentive awareness. I use the word attentive because sometimes Dr. Joe uses the expression, put your attention on the first center, put your attention. And after struggling with that, I reinterpret what he's saying. Let me rephrase that to how it works for me. I think of the expression be attentive awareness. Let me see if I can explain that. Let's say you're sitting in a car in the right-hand side of the driver. You go somewhere. The driver can tell you how he got there because he was attention oriented. He knows every turn. So the guy sitting next to him who saw everything the driver did couldn't tell you how to get there. Well, we turned right at this building and left on this drive. I have no idea because he was not attentive in his awareness. But you don't want to drive your attention, because if you're attending to counting the flagpoles as you go by, you're not seeing anything else. So it's not about attention. It's about being attentive to the field of your awareness. When you can learn to do that in a space that feels like the back of your head and occupy yourself in that, a funny thing happens. The CEO sits down because you're telling him, I don't need you right now. I'm busy doing this. You'll notice this strict, hard-nosed attentiveness, analytical mind will just take a break because you're busy doing awareness. And as you get comfortable doing awareness, you'll look up and see the gate to number 8 is open. And you can will yourself into number 8, because number 8 is all about awareness and expanding your awareness and having your consciousness in your awareness. I am this awareness. As long as you're saying to yourself, I am this attention, the door is closed and this guy's in charge. This is my first time you've heard me say that. We'll go around this a few times over these books. But think about that. Go into meditation and be awareness. And go up and down, not by this way, but by awareness. Takes practice, I understand. But as you get it right, you'll notice your attention sits down and the 8 opens up, and you'll move up in the 8 and you go, ah, this is what Ray was talking about. You'll see.
Thanks, Ray. Awesome.
Okay. Reason this: when you think from your past memories, you can only create past experiences. I had some doozies of past memories, and I can tell you, I recreated them again and again in my life. I didn't know how to let go of them. That's what we'll learn as we go through this book. There is a principle, I'm now on page 45. There is a principle in neuroscience called Hebb's law. It basically states that nerve cells that fire together wire together. Hebb's credo demonstrates that if you repeatedly activate the same nerve cells, then each time they turn on, it will be easier for them to fire in unison again. Eventually, those neurons will develop a long-term relationship. Let me explain that in another way. Remember, Hebb's law says anything that fires together wires together. If you have a trauma, let's say a car accident, and you were talking to somebody with green clothes on, and you were occupied with a green, when that trauma hits you, someday in the future, you're going to respond to someone wearing green, and you'll feel an adrenaline rush because of the association of, in that moment, you're looking at green, and an accident happens. That's the simple case. Let me give you another case. As somebody who dealt with PTSD, trauma, you ever heard the expression, it blew your mind? And you even use the example. Well, let me give you how realistic that expression is. Let's say you have a trauma. We're going to put that right here, okay? And there is 5 things going on in your head at the time. Just miscellaneous stuff. You could be listening to music, a particular song. You could be driving your car, a particular car. You could be going around through a particular part of the city, whatever. Now, a year later, you're driving the same car, going through the same particular part of the city, and you hear that same song, and you respond in a panic. And you go, what? I'm just driving my car. Why? Because of Hebb's laws. Things that are wired together and fire together will continue to wire and fire together. That's PTSD. I used to respond to the color green. I mean, it just green would just set me off. It's like, Ray, get over it. I couldn't. I used to respond to certain triggers, and I would overreact. Oh my God. It's like, get over it. Why? Because of Hebb's laws. Things that are wired together, they were happen at the same moment, fire together. And I would respond like that threat was present. We do this. This isn't just a military thing. This is an everyday thing. You're sitting at your desk at work, and your boss comes in and chews you out, and he's wearing a certain set of clothes, something happened, and you have a whole series of events, and it just freaks your head. You're going to carry this around with you until you learn how to unwire that event. That's Hebb's law. Okay. That is the lesson of PTSD. That is what blowing your mind means. It means you've had a Hebb's law event. Isn't that interesting? It's an actual thing. You're not just crazy. You actually wired and fired according to neurological principles. Really
Ray?
interesting. Yes.
Sorry, this is Karina. I just want to say something small here. I think that you are absolutely right, but this is not a response, it's a reaction.
Yes.
We respond with our consciousness. We react with our subconsciousness. That's all.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Respond is a present moment thing. React is because of a previous trigger or something like that. You're correct. Catherine, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. You become neurochemically attached to the conditions in your life. In time, you'll begin to think in the box because your brain will fire a finite set of circuits that then create a very specific mental signature. This signature is called your personality. Because of Hebb's law and the things that tied me to certain things, and the pattern that I kept repeating and repeating, that was my personality. You know, I created excuses for it, but my excuses didn't help me keep my job when I would go crazy. But that's part of my internal environment, and that's what we're talking about tonight. Your environment is just not just stuff outside your environment, because we're talking the cells of your body. My internal chemistry was the environment of the cells in my body. They are individual life forms. We are Ray. There's over 1 trillion of me here that corporately create this physical form that expresses my consciousness, Ray. In a very real way, you have become an effect of circumstances outside yourself. Did you see that? My present is an effect of my past. That is where our responsibility comes in, is we may not be able to control it rained on the party. How I respond to it is creating my today. You have allowed yourself to give up control of your destiny. Unlike Bill Murray's character in the movie Groundhog Day. I love that movie. Saw it many times. You're not even fighting against the ceaseless monotony of what you are like and what your life has become. Worse, you aren't the victim of some mysterious unseen force that has placed you in this repetitious loop. I am the creator of this repetitious loop because I have not taken control of my creative self and stopped it. Okay, let's be real. I didn't know how. Didn't even know I could. My religion I was raised with told me I couldn't. My society I was raised with told me I couldn't. My family I was raised with told me I couldn't. That's just who I was. Get out of here. The good news is that since you created this loop, you can choose to end it. You want good news of Dr. Joe? Write that on your board and put it on the wall. The good news is, okay, if science says I created this chaos of my life, not whether it rained or not, but the reaction to the rain, I created that. I can change it. I will take charge of it. And I will do something in me to change it. That's the good news, is that the potential for your life interchange is there. It's not woo-woo. It's not mysticism. It's not religion. It's not psychology. It's quantum science. It is a clear scientific fact. When you can change your energy, your life changes. You want a living example of it? You're talking to them. I'm telling you, I don't have time on any given lesson to say except, wow. An abrupt ending to my phase 4 melanoma going into my 6th surgery. Not my first, my 6th surgery. plus all the other burns and stuff that I had up to that point, ended just like that, because my energy changed just like that. The quantum model of reality tells us that to change our lives, we must fundamentally change the way we think, act, and feel. We must change our state of being, because how we think, feel, and behave is, in essence, our personality. It's our personality that creates our personal reality. Now, that's a tough pill to swallow. So to create a new personal reality, a new life, we must create a new personality. We must become someone else. Every religion in the world teaches the old man dies and a new man comes. Every religion teaches that. There's a reality that it's not saying the body dies and we get a new body and, with new conception and stuff. That's not what this is about. I mean, the mental process, the energy of the person that day changed, and my body had to change with it. I had that profound of an event. And I got up off the floor, a babbling fool, trying to tell people this crazy explosion that I had in my heart and my mind. I finally got used to it, so I quit talking about it eventually, except to people who want to hear it. As a common thread, they all had a dream, vision, or objective that was much larger than they were. They're talking about the great people of history. They all believed in a future destiny that was so real in their minds that they began to live that way. In other words, they behaved as if what they envisioned was already a reality. Now, I'm with you on that. I read that, and I read it. I must have, and it's like, say what? I didn't get it. I read this book many times before that started soaking in. Let me read it again. They behaved as if what they envisioned was already a reality. They had a future vision of who they wanted to be, a desire. This is not something out of a catalog book. When I was a kid, we used to get, that was a long time ago. Remember, for those who are my generation, remember the big fat Sears catalogs that you'd get every now and then, or one of your neighbors would have, and you slip through and every toy in the world was in it, Oh, I looked at, oh, I want one, I want one of them. And this is not that. That was just a funny side story. This is not that. A future self is you changed in your future expression. I couldn't do that. Why? Because my past was so ugly, so noisy. All I could do was fight that and wish for that. And wishing isn't it, because he says you have to behave as if you have to participate in it. One of the big parts we'll go through in this book and You Are the Placebo is how to heal your relationship with your past self. It's a small step thing. The biggest thing, the word I use, is you forgive your past. I didn't say forgive somebody else. I have no concern about you forgiving somebody else. I have no concern about you wanting justice and going to somebody and kowtowing them and saying, I'm sorry. Don't do that, is in fact I'll tell you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about letting go of your demand of justice for the injustice done for you. Letting go of the shame of the things that you did. I did. I was so shameful because I was so out of control in my anger. I had to forgive myself. I had to let go of it. Let go of it. I had to let go of it 1,000 times until my past self was quiet. My future self was just an illusion in my mind. We'll go into greater detail of that. But that's what this is about, is how do you envision your future self in a state of beingness? It's not a small subject. Evie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so when I started reading this, my biggest struggle with with this future self is when you have so many, aspects of your life that you want to change, how do you begin to see the kind of future self? Like, for example, like I want to quit smoking. I smoke cigarettes, and I want to build my business, and create a financial stability in my life. And there's a few other aspects, and it's like when I sit down to meditate, it's like, or visualize, it's like my brain freezes.
Right. There's multiple parts to that question, and they're very individualized. So pardon me as I use kind of broad strokes. Your future self is not a want. It's not a picture out of a catalog. And even that is a conditional statement, because everybody's so different that if I say general statements, I'm generally wrong. So you just kind of take it as a kind of a broad stroke, please. Your future self is a heart's desire. Now, every example I give can be contradicted by an example that makes it very specific. Dr. Joe repeatedly used examples of his children saying, I want this vacation, and this guy says, I want this job, and stuff like that. And they were all true and correct. But the point is that it's all driven by a heart's desire. But what is interfering with that? What is interfering with it is the noise of your past in your mind. The experience that I had is that I had to consciously start healing. I call them barking dogs. The voices in my head that wanted to be dealt with, needed to be dealt with. Last week, we had a wonderful short discussion on this. Every time you want to do this future thing, and you got this idealistic thing, there's a past energy that says, what about me? What about me? What about me? And it is a strange phenomena, but it was just so graphically talked about last week. You see, what it is that this guy is an energy that's somehow related to this guy, and he's not been dealt with. And you're doing this to him. You're pushing him away, pushing him away. You can't do this guy until this guy's dealt with. Why? Well, always remember, your past self, your future self, your present self is all the same self. All of this is you. And if you're pushing you away, it's kind of hard to deal with you. So to do this desire, sometimes this desire doesn't have a noise back here. You've lived a clean enough, healthy enough life that you can just let your heart be open, find your desire, and start building on it. I wasn't one of those kind of persons. Every time I thought about my future self, I had lots of noise I had to deal with, and I had to deal with it for months. And I can tell you, I cried the first day I sat at my desk and my mind was quiet. Oh, second greatest miracle of my whole time with Dr. Joe. The first was my life was spared by my cancer healing. But the day I sat down here and I looked around to deal with the barking dogs and my mind was quiet, first time in my life, oh my goodness, can't tell you the significance of that, to sit there and have a quiet mind for the first time in my life. Wow. So anyway, so as I was trying to make this desire barking, and I would forgive it, release it, forgive it, release it, diminish it, love the inner child in me that's hurting because of this and all this kind of stuff, lots of parts. They went away slowly, and that energy came back and helped me heal. And another one, that energy came back and helped me heal. You follow? Because these are you. This isn't some opponent. This isn't some demon that's pursuing you. This is you. This is your energy that's barking at you, wants you to forgive it and heal it so that it can be absorbed into your greater energy and do what it's supposed to do, heal you and walk with you. Once this was quiet, I looked at myself, and this self, my future self, became part of my present self. And now I can just turn in and enjoy my future self and my present self, and I've had a lot of wonderful experiences. And I'm still growing in skill and energy. So if you're having a hard time seeing this, give thought to the noise that says, what about me? And quiet it, heal it. Remember, it has nothing to do with anybody else. I don't care if this guy is as guilty as hell or whether you are. The goal is to release the energy, be at peace, quiet it in yourself. Whatever you put value on, this is made to remember what you value. That's what the cortex does. Oh, this is important. Remember it. Every time you rehearse it, you're going, oh, this is important. Rehearse it. What you do when you get this barking dog is try to quiet it. Oh, that was a bad day. I remember that. I forgive you. I let you go. That's nice. Now go. Come into my heart. I love you. Love it. Release it. Love it. Release it until it's at peace. Tomorrow it might come back, but it will come back a little bit less. Then you love it. Release it until you convince this. Till you convince this that this is no longer important, and it will quiet in the background. A month from now, it might come up. Oh, I remember you. Yeah, you go play. I need you like this. And you bring it in, loving it. Then when you think of this, there's no more distraction. And you can imagine, what would it be like walking on the beach? I have the wealth to be comfortable. I have the wealth not to care. I have the wealth to be by myself in this beautiful scenery, feeling the warmth of the sun and the sound of the waves. And you be that event, if that's your heart. And you let your heart be like a magnet. Remember, Dr. Joe says, the intention is the signal that goes out. That's the vertical wave. The heart is a magnetic wave. It draws it back. So you tell the universe, this is what I seek, like Batman's signal. And then you open your heart and just love the dickens out of it. And the heart is a magnetic wave. I'm not making this stuff up. The heart really produces a horizontal wave, energy wave, that is a magnetic wave. Magnetic waves are horizontal earth waves. This is a high frequency wave, a vertical wave. That's science. That's not woo-woo. That's not mysticism. That's not religion. That's science. And that's how it works. But first, you got to get your past and your present, your past and your future into your present. I kind of went off on that. I hope I answered that question. The
Yes,
quantum
you did.
model.
It was perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. I'm glad. The quantum model of reality tells us that to change our lives, we must fundamentally change the way we think, act, and feel. That's what you've got to change how you act and feel. But if you're rehearsing your past, you haven't changed how you feel. You've got to release your past to change how you feel. That's the human experience. That's not woo-woo. That's the human experience. If you're still rehearsing the past, you haven't changed yourself. As a common thread, they all had a dream, a vision. In other words, they behaved as if they were envisioning what they envisioned was already a reality. Is this something special? Anybody here ever take martial arts? I took it for a number of years. You rehearse in slow motion your action 1,000 times because when the event begins, your body needs to know in detail every act that you move. Is that strictly martial arts? Of course not. Anybody here pick up an instrument and start learning a piano, learning an instrument? You start kind of fumbling and you rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it. I've seen people play the piano and hold a conversation. It's like, what? Because their body is so rehearsed that they're rehearsing the past memories. This is a normal thing. What we're talking about here is to disconnect that past in our present so that we can now connect to our future in our present. It's how it's done. Everybody does it. I find it rather challenging, but that's how it works. When one holds a dream independent of its environment, when we have a dream, that future, the greatness coming up, we'll see that overcoming the environment is inextricably linked with overcoming the body and time. When you overcome the body environment, the room you're in, the environment, the outer environment, the chemical environment, the energy environment, and you become the conscious creator of this environment, the body and time, your life will change. Let me see if I can get that sentence again. In Gandhi's case, he was not swayed by what happened in his outer world environment. He didn't worry about how he felt and what happened to him, his body. He didn't care how long it would take to realize his dream of freedom, time. He simply knew that all these elements would sooner or later bend to his intention. When you hold this experience, when you've cleaned all the naysayers, not out there, in your mind, the naysayers of your past, and you can hold this experience in your mind, it's only a matter of opportunity for that to present itself. Anybody who's done arts knows what I'm talking about. Whether it's music, painting, martial arts, all these skills, you're rehearsing a future thing so that your very beingness can portray that thing. This is a human thing. We've just been taught through our society that it doesn't apply to our everyday life. But it does. This is what we're talking about. Taking that same pattern of behavior that you use to learn music, art, martial arts, or any skill, so that you can unconsciously live that future self now. I really want you to realize that this isn't woo-woo, and that what Dr. Joe is trying to enliven in our consciousness is that when we realize we are conscious creators of our world, our reality, we can start changing things. Like what he said earlier, he started realizing he was doing this. He was responsible for his response. I didn't know that when I started this work. I had, it's really amazing when you really start putting to this. As we go through this, we'll talk about change, and that'll be a fun conversation. We'll do that in another couple of weeks. On the bottom of 49, neuroscience has proven that we can change our brains. Put a period there. I'm old enough to be part of the generation that was taught we have a certain number of cells when we grow up, and that's it. You damage your brain cells, you're stupider today than you were yesterday. That's what I was taught. I was taught that my gene says I'm going to be this kind of person, and you're stuck with it. That's what I was taught. Both those things are flat wrong. Your brains rewire according to your experience and your knowledge and your education, your environment, your behavior, your thinking, your consciousness. Your brain is constantly rewiring. And your genes are responding to your environment, which mostly is chemical and energy-wise. They are not fixed on and off. They are wrong when they said that. Did I say that strong enough to let you know that I really, really mean it? And that's an important point. They were wrong when they taught us that. Neuroscience has proven that we can change our brains and therefore our behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs just by thinking differently. Through mental rehearsal, the circuits in the brain can reorganize themselves to reflect our objectives. We can make our thoughts so real that the brain changes to look like the event has already became a physical reality. We can change it to be ahead of the actual experience. My mind for most of my life was a reflection of my past with my PTSD and all the terrors that I saw. Come Dr. Joe and he says, well, stop that. Start thinking of what you would like to be in the future and have your mind do that same thing, but for that instead of that. Well, to do that, I had to learn to let go of that. But it works. It's the same principle. What I hold in my mind, my body will start acting like, being like, energy like, thinking like, picturing. How cool is that? It really, this isn't woo-woo, this is science. Whether we physically or mentally acquire a skill, there are 4 elements that we all use to change our brains. Remember, we're actually changing the wiring of the brains. Physical nerves are, some are going away and new ones are coming back. Really changing it. When you learn a new knowledge, have you ever seen Dr. Joe's video where it shows the neurons connecting and other neurons taken apart? Blew me away when I first saw that. I didn't know they could do that. I thought nerves were like hard wires. No, they're very dynamic. When you learn new things, when you receive hands-on instruction, it's kind of like a new thing. When you pay attention to something, when you focus on something new, let's say you go to an art gallery and you see a sculpture that just grabs your attention. Putting your attention on this new piece of art that just grabs your mind and its lines and its curves and its beauty, your brain actually, in that moment, is working for microscopic cellular nerves are connecting to give you a new mind. Isn't that cool? And it does it by repetition. As you get it one time, if you never look at it again, it will diminish, and those cells, that material, goes and does something else. But every time you rehearse it, it reinforces it and reinforces it and reinforces it. As you practice meditation, the first few times you go into the space and you try to hold your attentiveness in that space, it may take a lot of choosing as your habit of popping around in your mind comes and goes and comes and goes. You may have to work to hold your attentiveness in that space. But it's like walking through a field. The more you do it, the more you get there. As you learn to bring the energy up and feel the energy rise up, first time you do it, it's like, I don't feel a thing. As you teach the body what to look for, you'll start feeling it. Because those neurons will start connecting deeper and deeper. And pretty soon, just the suggestion of it, and I feel the lights coming up in me. I've done it for a couple of years now. And so you build neurons, you literally rewire your brain. I think that's so cool. I keep saying it. Participants who mentally rehearsed also followed this formula, except they never got their bodies physical. So he starts talking about the people who were practicing piano. Some were told to do the physical thing on the piano, and others were told to sit there with their hands on the lap and just rehearse it in the mind. And then they examine not their hands, not their skill at playing the piano. They examine the part of the mind that learns piano. And the ones who actually did the work and the ones who just rehearsed it in the mind had almost the same amount of change in their neural pathways. Isn't that cool? When we can change our minds independent of the environment and then steadfastly embrace the ideal with sustained concentration, the brain will be ahead of the environment. Now, there's some tricky words here that need to be clarified. When we can change our minds independent of the environment, in other words, if we're thinking of a future self, because that so-and-so did this to me, I want that, that future self is not independent of your past. If you say, I want this, and this is how we go and do it, and you build, that future is not independent of your past because you bring in the past to it. Can you create an image? Just let your heart's desire bloom a flower and work your mind to it, independent of any story of your past. Just a fantasy. Wouldn't it be cool? My heart's desire, if that was it. I go to the beach because I grew up in Pensacola Beach, and I got beach scenes all in my imagination. So to me, that's my go-to place. So I know I've got a friend that has mountain scenes, and he says, Ray, why do you go to the beach? I love mountains. Okay, go to the mountain, I'll go to the beach. And we're both sitting in the room meditating, So he's walking around smelling trees and listening to birds, and I'm on the beach listening to seagulls, and crashing waves. So it's kind of funny. But anyway, but I can go there with no past because this is a new event for me. Remember, after these subjects repeatedly mentally practice, okay? So can you do that and embrace it? Can you fall in love with this image? Don't just project it like you watch on television. Love that image as you would in your heart. I just love walking the beach. I am emotionally involved in it. And I get all kind of reactions in me because I walk on the beach in my meditation. This is mental rehearsal, an important tool in breaking the habit of being yourself. It's rehearsal. Remember the part about the neurons? If you do it once, you'll make a connection. But without rehearsal, it will just go away. The mind will say, oh, I guess it's not important, and it will fade and go away. But that's why you get up every morning and you do the work and you do the practice to rehearse it, to rehearse it, to rehearse it. And pretty soon, eventually, you're going to find you move up in that space and this guy sits down and your world opens up back here. And you're not pointed in your awareness, you're spatial. I sense the whole space about me. Pretty soon, this is a real thing this is a human experience. But it takes practice. If you were an analytical head like I was, it took me months to get there. But like I said, I know people that go, oh, you mean this? Go, how'd you do that? Right? To understand that the neurological change can take place in the absence of physical interaction in the environment is crucial to our success in breaking the habit. You must understand that what goes on in your consciousness is more important in this story than what's going on out here. Okay, to sit down and quiet yourself, you got to have a safe environment. If you got things going on, barking dogs, crying kids, neighbors yelling, you're not going to get too far. So yeah, you got to have a safe moment to do this. But what goes on out in the world is the same thing that's always going out in the world. Wars and rumors of wars. You'll be hard put to find a history when that wasn't going on. But in my little bubble here, I can sit down and I can tell myself how much I love myself. You got to learn to love yourself. And I can bring it all in and I can think of my future self, which is myself. And I can love my future self and I can do things with my future self. And then I can love an intention for somebody else. And I can love that person with my whole self, my past, my future. We're all here and we can love this person and energy happens. And it has nothing to do with my outer environment. This is a moment, a bubble in all the universe. And it's an energy thing. It's not a psychology thing. It's not a mind thing. It's an energy thing. And when you're new to this, it might be a kind of a challenge thing to understand what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about takes practice. Oh God, like I said, it was 9 months to a year for me to have my big breakthrough. So I understand that it takes practice even to discover space. Let me give you another example that I think is kind of funny. If you bought this book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, on drjoe.com, Dispenza.com, and look around in his store, you might find that this book has 2 recorded guided meditations that go with it. One is called space. I think it's space something. And the other is water rising. At the same time, I bought a set of 3 guided meditations called Blessings in the Energy Centers 1, 2, and 3. So I tried to do the meditation of this space. And you'd have to understand just how, me a little bit, to understand. I tried to do space within the space, and I'd open my eyes like, what space? You know, because I was still locked in here, and I'd go, space? What's he talking about? And I try again the next day. I move into the space, and I'm looking around because I haven't let go of my analytical self. I didn't know how. I didn't even understand how. And then I tried to do water rising one. And well, I grew up in Pensacola Beach, and I had friends that drowned. I almost drowned. I was rescued from drowning. I rescued other people from drowning. Was a real deal for me when I was growing up. And sitting in this chair, imaging the water rising, and I'd get about here in the water. I knew I'm sitting in my chair. I knew it was symbolic. I knew all those things. But remember that story about past still affecting your present? I still had stories in my mind about people drowning and me almost drowning. That water get about here, and I would have an adrenaline rush. That ended that meditation. So I went back and I did the Blessing of the Energy Centers 1, 2, and 3. And I did them again, and I did it again, and I did it again. And I probably did them for 6 months, just those 3 meditations, until I got clean enough. Forgiving, until I got understanding enough. As you do the energy centers and move up, you start to understand space that he talks about, okay? Because you start going into the space, and you just, by sheer repetition, trying to figure out what's this space, I finally found it. And once I understood space, and I could move my awareness of space up and down my body, now I could go to that meditation. When he says space within the space, I now had a concept and a feel and a consciousness of space within the greater space. But it took just what he says, repetition, until my neural pathways connected. And I became aware. And one awareness grew to another and another. Oh, Sandra, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so now that you mentioned about the space and the space, so when he mentions about notice the space between your temples or your eyes, or your nose and space, you try to focus your attention in the part of the body, right? But then when he says, and now focus the attention in the energy that is in the space around the space. So a space when you are. So then the brain started looking the space between the house where you are, the space of the room, and then the space between the universe, right? So
Okay.
what do you focus about? What exactly do you?
So in what you just told me, what did you say that was incorrect?
I don't think it's incorrect. I mean, that's
You
why
used
my
the word
brain is,
focus.
yeah.
Don't
When it says,
focus. You didn't hear
okay,
me say focus, did you? I said
when he
become
said become
aware.
aware,
I
yeah,
said become
become aware.
attentive. I said become attentive. I said become aware.
Okay,
This focuses. When you're focusing, you're putting this, Dr. Joe calls this part of your mind, the frontal lobe, the CEO of this. When you're focusing, you're doing this. And focusing has its part in our life. That's how we survive. That's how we work. That's how we function. I didn't say focus. I said become aware. I said become attentively aware. Right where you're sitting, close your eyes and focus on your room over your left shoulder, in front of you, and on the right shoulder. You can do that one at a time. Now, sitting right where you are, become aware of the circle about your body. Close your eyes. Become aware of just a few feet circle around your body. You can be aware of the whole circle, but you can only be focused in one point. Quit
Okay.
focusing. Be attentively. Now, I use the word attentive because that tells your mind to remember the experience. You can be aware as you're traveling in a car of all everything goes by, and somebody will say, "What happened?" I don't remember. I saw everything, but I don't remember. Did you see that big church back there? I don't remember. I just was looking out the window. You were aware. You were broad aware, but you didn't really record anything. So I use the word attentive. Record your experience. I never said focus. Focus is an analytical event, action. Quit that. In this environment, when you go to work, focus. I worked in electronics and I focused. I know what focus is. My electronics was tiny, tiny, tiny stuff. It's kind of funny. My son thinks it was weird because he works on great, big, huge commercial pieces of equipment. I had a magnifying glass and a microscope on my bench because I worked on tiny stuff, tweezers. I had tweezers that I worked with my parts on. Seriously, I did. And I had different tweezers for different, well, anyway, that's another story. So I knew what focus was about. I was very rule driven, very focused. That's not this. Don't focus. Become aware. Have you ever walked through the woods and your ears kind of twitch? Because you become so aware of the environment around you. You heard something over here and you heard something in this, and you're just like stretching your awareness to become aware of the woods about you. Maybe there's a
Yes.
critter there. That's what we're after. We're not after focus. We're after awareness. Once you can do that sitting in the chair and become aware of the space about you, aware of the space behind you, and get busy in that, and then become creative in your awareness. Can you move that little bubble of awareness between your eyes and sense the space of your head? Sense the space internal to your head. Can you sense it? Can you kind of get a feel for the organs in your brain? The one that always tickled me, says, become aware of the space below your chin. It's like, what? There's nothing there. But that was part of the object of the lesson. Can you be aware of a space just here? That was part of the exercise. And in that awareness, okay, I can be aware of the space in my hands, and I can see this sphere and this. And if I worked on it, it will light up, and I can feel heat in my hands. Like I said, I've been doing this for a few years. And so once you start moving the space up and down your body, you can focus on the space of your heart. And then just start expanding that space. So when we talk about the energy of an energy center, you move your awareness, not your focus, your awareness, this little bubble of awareness, and you move it through your energy fields. Where the attention goes, energy flows. There is an attentiveness in your awareness that brings with it the energy of your consciousness. Your consciousness knows what you're trying to do. You just got to get it right to get fully function. Quit focusing and practice space. Maybe next week I'll go into more detail of that. Yeah, it's 8 o'clock. So we're going to wrap this lesson up. I got one more statement to go.
Thank you, Ray.
You're welcome. I got one more statement to go. If you can influence your brain to change before you experience a desired future event, you will create the appropriate neural circuits that will enable you to behave in alignment with your intention before it becomes a reality. Through your own repeated mental rehearsal of a better way to think, act, and be, you will install the neural hardware needed to physiologically prepare you for the new event. That's a trip. As you rehearse this future self, not only is your brain making new neural pathways, your body chemistry will start getting used to this new energy, and those chemicals will instruct your genes to start expressing proteins to help you be the reality that future self is. It's not just a head game. It's an energy thing that changes your energy, changes your neural pathways in your brain, changes the chemicals in your body, and goes as far as changing the protein expressions of your genes. Cool stuff. So you can believe in a future you cannot yet see or experience with your senses, but have thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is actually changed to look like the experience has already happened ahead of the physical event in your external environment. If so, then your brain is no longer a record of the past, but has become a map to the future. My intensity, my stress, my anger was a reflection of my past. This goofy old man now is a reflection of this future that I'm walking toward. It's just how it works. It's the same me. It's the same principle. What energy I have, I become. I've been rehearsing this all my life. I quit doing that. Now I'm rehearsing this, my future self, and I'm becoming that. And it's really getting cool. It's really doable. If this old grumpy Army veteran who was dying of cancer, certified PTSD, can become this, all you sweethearts, man, you sweethearts got a cakewalk compared to, but I got a question though. How bad do you want it? Do you want it bad enough to not allow bad enough to do the work, bad enough to let go of your past ideas of who you think you are and become, how bad do you want it? Well, I had an advantage. I had a life threat on me. I either was going to change or die. So I wasn't going to quit my struggle. I went at it with everything I had every day, multiple times a day. And I got nothing for months. How bad do you want it? Change your environment. And it begins. That's what I had to say tonight. Any last comment before I end the recording? Okay.